Hey there. Welcome to Spiritual Unraveling with Ashley and Nate, a podcast about the sometimes messy process of spiritual awakening. We invite you to listen in as we discuss spiritual topics and themes showing up in our personal lives and out in the broader world. We promise to always bring our grounded and lived experiences to the exploration of these topics. We know that the process of awakening can sometimes be lonely and even scary. It is our intention to remind you that you're not going through this alone and that we're all in this together. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the episode.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Nate.
Hey, Ash.
Welcome to today's episode. We were just chatting and we thought it might be nice to just remind ourselves and anyone who's listening to really make time to not forget yourself during the holidays, to really find time to ground, to center, come back home. And we were talking about all the different ways that we can get pulled out of our routine, out of our sense of ourselves, out of our self-care during this time, whether it's time with family or food or alcohol or just being on vacation, being away from home, and to just find those moments to center, to ground, to really care for yourself. Just seems like such a good time to remember that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as you're saying that, the very first thing that comes up for me, giving myself a bit of this advice, is to release any idea of having these things be ideal or like they are when you're not in the holiday time, when you're not being pulled left, right, and center, when you're not being presented with all these different social functions and gatherings, and to just kind of embrace the do the best that you can mentality. Because I am already in the throes of this. I have family staying with me right now. I have one child who had a birthday last week, so we had a big celebration, and just all the change in routine I can find in myself that I'm trying to pull myself back into the quote unquote normal routine and kind of check all of my self-care or introspection boxes. Am I going to be able to get my meditation in? Am I going to be able to get my hike in or run or whatever? And realizing that what's really going to benefit me most is to kind of almost jettison the idea of how things should look and just do a little bit more what you were mentioning in the intro, which is not forget myself, to bring myself back into this time, and to also maybe let go of how I think it should look and just take little bits and pieces of self-care where I can find them. And that is going to be more helpful and less kind of triggering than like feeling like you're failing at your normal self-care routine, which is kind of what has been happening to me lately, where I'm like, I missed meditation again, or I did this because I'm with family and I've got in-laws in the house, and the tone and the feeling and the energy of the house is just different, and it's exciting and it's festive, and that's great. And that also means that for me to stay centered and present, I'm going to need to adjust my energy. And that means taking into consideration that this is a different energy in the house. And so I guess the other thing that's coming out as I'm talking is the capacity to stay present in the moment and find yourself is really key right now. And it's kind of like putting all of this, it's like field testing a lot of the spiritual tools that we all talk about. It's easy to do all of this stuff when you have a very fixed routine, kids are off, that house is kind of quiet, you have a certain amount of time to get stuff done, or you wake up before everybody, but you have things that throw your routine off, and then all of a sudden you have to be like, okay, now I need to be adaptable and see how I can do this stuff in, a little bit of chaos. So yeah, those are kind of my first couple of thoughts. What do you think?
Well, I really like the sort of being easy with yourself. I think we always can benefit from bringing in a sense of ease and gentleness with anything that we're working on or paying attention to. While you were talking, I sort of had this feeling like I think a lot of people feel grief during the holidays. And that there's not everybody. Some people really thrive during this time, and I think that's wonderful. But I think a lot of people have grief, and I was kind of thinking that part of what this reminder could be about is really just tending to yourself, really tending to yourself, whatever shows up. And if grief shows up, then really being with that and finding time and carving out time to be with that. And I wonder if there's some connection to the holidays around excess or anticipation or consumerism or intimacy in the family dynamic, difficulties in the family dynamic. Like, what has contributed to people's experience of the holidays as a time of difficulty or challenge or grief? And I don't know, it's probably different for everybody. There's just a sense that there is a lot of anticipation around the holidays and expectation. It's supposed to be a happy, jolly time. It's going to be wonderful. You're going to reconnect with people maybe you haven't connected with. And I just wonder if there's just this, we all know intuitively that when you have these big expectations, there's going to be disappointment. There's going to be sort of the other side of it, which is the crash. And so how do you find maybe a sense of attunement or neutrality, presence as you go through it? It doesn't necessarily mean you cancel the holidays. It might mean you cancel the holidays, but it might mean just staying really present as you go through to notice, is my little boy or my little girl really excited or anticipating, or does it have high expectations, or am I feeling disappointment or something like that? And just really staying present with all of those feelings and maybe using it as a time for healing, as a time for understanding, or I don't know. I think the holidays always sort of have big growth experiences embedded in them if you're paying attention. And noticing your own pull to excess or leaving yourself or not being true to yourself, or whatever those triggers are, those pulls are, just really bringing presence to it all.
Well, I think it's interesting and kind of funny that kind of our remedy for managing yourself during Christmas time is presence. It's presence. And I'm joking, but I'm also being so serious. It's so big. Yeah, we were watching a movie with the kids and the grandparents last night, all of us together, which was a lot of fun. And I noticed myself to kind of, drifting off to tasks and doing things, and then realize I'm like, this is such a beautiful moment. Here we have multiple generations all sitting together. So I sat down next to my daughter, my youngest, and grandma was on the other side, and everyone's laughing and enjoying themselves. And I guess that's the other piece of this, is just, it's really easy to there's like a weird momentum and a pull energetically around the holidays. And a lot of it is geared towards having kind of special, deep moments, but it's also ironically very easy to let them fly by. And so there's this interesting tension, at least for me, where there's kind of so much opportunity and sweetness around, but it is very fleeting. And if you don't take a moment and really look at it and kind of dig in and revel in those moments, then kind of before you know it, they're gone. And we don't, as a culture, this is a weird time of year for Americans where we all kind of move into this space where things get very different. People smile at each other more. They open doors for each other. There's a lot of beauty to behold. You do have to acknowledge and counter that with the idea that there's a lot of kind of pressure and build up and momentum. And so it's this weird, interesting juxtaposition that I have been feeling lately. And and then ironically, the remedy is presence. Just coming back into the moment and really looking around as much as you can and trying to take it all in.
I love that, Nate. I love that. It reminds me of what it's all supposed to be about.
Yeah.
Right? Like, why do we get together with family during this time? And why do we think about giving each other gifts and being together? There's such a beautiful invitation there. And it can get very distracted very quickly in the stress of it all, in
Yeah.
the busyness of it all, and in the excess of it all. And I think I love that reminder of just being present with these. I mean, our family, we have our own traditions, and even though my kids are teenagers now, we all look forward to them on some level. I love there's so many aspects of the holidays that I really love. I'm a sucker for like Christmas decorations and lights and music and kind of like the darkness even kind of
Mm-hmm.
brings us all in together and spending time enclosed time together. And so, yeah, thank you for that. And I have that's a beautiful like visual of the multi generations all together being together,
Yeah.
and you're right. That doesn't happen all the time. And we made special time for that. So to really honor it and be in it and revel in it, it's beautiful.
Yeah. And it's also, as you were talking, and I'm just thinking about it too, there's also a strong call. I feel a strong call to let it be for you individually, each person, what it is. And to not let how it is or how you perceive it to be for other people bother you or get in the way of any of it. And I realize that's another thing that I have been experiencing, just doing a lot of shopping. I'm out and about. And also, I know that with some of my other family members, the holidays can be a little bit fraught. There is some sadness, there is grief, there's some tension sometimes. And so I guess the other thing that I'm thinking about is letting everyone just have their own process around it as well. And that if I'm present and enjoying it or bringing my energy to it in the way that I feel called, and no one else needs to be a certain way in order for me to have my relationship to it, then it also relieves a lot of tension. It feels like a lot of pressure kind of goes out. It doesn't have to be the same for everybody. It can't possibly be the same for everybody. And yeah, just I feel like expectation and pressure and momentum, these kind of words, they can all be baked in a little bit with the holidays. And I think a lot of that has to do with perspective. A lot of that has to do with really having healthy boundaries and knowing where your energy ends and where other people's begins, and non-judgment, and just kind of, as much as you can, letting everything kind of be okay, because you're going to get a lot of everything in this time of year. I mean, that is one of the hallmarks in a way of the holidays, is sometimes there's a lot of excitement, sometimes there's a lot of sadness, sometimes there's a lot of momentum or stress or pressure. And yeah, so
Together.
yeah,
There's a lot of
absolutely.
togetherness, right? And
Yeah.
it's a different vibe. I mean, you really do have to adjust to it.
Yes.
What you're saying is good. Like, really be aware of your expectations of others
Yeah.
in all of it.
That's the word, expectation. There you go. I was trying to figure out, I'm like, what am I talking? I'm circling around it. Yeah. But somehow trying to divorce expectations, trying to separate them out so that what's happening for me is mine, and what's happening for other people's is theirs. Acknowledging that and letting it happen doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to let that affect your energy. And
Yeah.
I think particularly you and I have both, as we talked about on the podcast in different episodes, we kind of both identify as empathic people who feel other people's energy pretty easily. And I think that's kind of what I was getting at, is don't let what's happening for other people necessarily pull you one way or the other. It's okay to acknowledge it and to let them have that process, but also try to be more sensitive and aware of your own energy and your own needs. And then that will ultimately be the best for you and for the group dynamic.
Yeah, it's so funny. As you were talking, I was like, we could probably just go back and revisit every podcast we've done and say, like, do this, because
Yeah.
and we're not saying do this for anybody, but just the reminders of what we're working on all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We're always working on letting go. We're always working on those healthy boundaries. We're always working on all these things. And I think right now we're talking about like this particular time period can throw us off.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the time we probably need all of our practices the most, all of these conscious choices, to really be conscious. This is probably the time that we need them the most, because it's just a time that gets funky and brings a lot of things up for people. And I think that's beautiful. I mean, I think if things are coming up for you, they're coming up for you.
Mm-hmm.
If the holidays are a struggle, if you can't wait till they're over, then this might be a really good time to pay attention to what that is about and really get intimate with it and do some inquiry about it and explore it without judgment. Creating like a new relationship to probably something that's old for most people, and get excited about that potential, that possibility of growth. And I mean, I'm a nerd for that stuff, but I think it's amazing when we have the capacity to be aware, then these things are just fruitful times. There's a lot in there. And I know you and I had been talking about anticipating this time where you were going to have house guests and how you were going to take care of yourself. So you had consciousness before you were able even to anticipate, knowing that the schedule was going to be off and the vibe was going to change a little bit. And, so that it's just that consciousness is everything. It doesn't mean you don't want your in-laws to be there. You do. It's just, how can I stay conscious and stay connected in a time when I can anticipate I might easily be taken out of that and go into a different mode. So I think it's amazing to watch ourselves and see where our mind goes, where our emotions go, what our choices are.
Yeah, it's like a time where you can really field test your spiritual practice, because it's heightened. You're going to have unique and different opportunities showing up for you. There's a lot of things that can pull you one way or the other. And I think for me, I can really see during unsettled times, I can see where my routine and my kind of relying on that normal kind of pattern it's almost like the spiritual practice gets a little stale. It's like, well, it's easy to do all that stuff then. When do you really want to be able to find your center? In times of great stress, in turmoil. I mean, if you're in a position where that's happening to you, that is when a practice really pays dividends, because when everyone else is kind of losing it or really following the energy of a group dynamic, you can turn inward and say, okay, I know where to go. When things get a little hairy, I can go inside and I can reference this part of myself, because I do it every day when it's not a problem. And so just that realization alone in that reframe helps me to then move through this time with a little more grace and ease. And that's kind of the genesis and the origin of what I was talking about when I was saying, just be easy with yourself about the practice and don't let it doesn't have to be perfect. Take it where you can get it and know that you've done the work. And now let it breathe a little, and also maybe don't be as rigid so that you don't miss the moments, right? I don't want to be pulling myself away from a fun group activity because I'm like, I got to go meditate. This is the time when I do this. I meditate so that I can bring more joy and balance and love into my life. And if puzzling, having a 4 or 5 family members around a puzzle and everyone's laughing and enjoying hot chocolate, like, hey, bud, that's the moment.
Don't miss it.
Yeah. It's fun to talk about this stuff because it really does. It pulls all these kind of disparate thoughts that are happening around the holidays together. And I kind of get a chance to coalesce them a little and like really examine just the way that your brain works during this time. It's like, it's a strange energy and good. Ultimately very beneficial. And I'm not talking about like of the holidays are just fun and good for me because I enjoy them. But also when we come back to spiritual unraveling and some of the tenets and the things that we talk about, I'm realizing that this unique energy that the holidays present also give me a chance to examine my relationship to all this stuff in a unique kind of way because things are different.
Yeah.
And it's weird because it's kind of meta to talk about this stuff. And also but their practices. I don't know. You know what I mean, though.
I know it. I was just thinking about how this past weekend I was able to meet this guy who has a nonprofit called Mission for the Homeless, and he comes during Christmas time. I think because to try to solicit support for what he's doing. He's doing this amazing work in the East Bay here, and I think he comes at Christmas time because people start to touch into this energy of giving and thinking about others. And I was just thinking how there's coming into the holiday season, I think a lot of our inner children are up and are active and alive, and maybe sometimes we get a little distracted or consumed by that. And so having him come, and talk and really talk about this, just holding this bigger picture of people who don't have anything at all. And it kind of pulls you into this higher perspective. And I think anything that can pull you out of getting stuck in your, what do we want to call it? Conditioning or default mode or ego or, stuck in like the little one that is maybe stuck in time a little bit developmentally or whatever, we all have that.
Yeah.
But to hold a bigger perspective, like what you're bringing in about really being present for these beautiful gatherings, these beautiful moments that don't happen all the time. And then also thinking about this larger picture of our humanity and our larger community of people, and really including everybody in your heart during this time. There's sort of a heart opening. I was hesitant to bring this up because I don't even know what it is. Because I know there's Christmas, but there's also it's not just Christmas that happens during this time. It's the solstice, it's Hanukkah, it's there's Kwanzaa. It's like all these things are happening during this time, but what is it really? And what happens in this heart opening that makes us more loving but also more vulnerable?
Yeah.
It's like more loving, but we're more vulnerable. So there's like a special quality to this time that has so much opportunity in it. So much opportunity for, I know for me, hearing Pastor Vinny talk about his work with the homeless population just broke my heart open. Just really, I mean, I had to go to my car and cry afterwards. It was so touching, this devotion to service, devotion to serving the neediest of the population. It hit me, it struck me and opened my heart. And what that does when we have these big heart openings, it just takes us out of our worries and our little me and our little neurotic self. It just like that just blasted into outer space. I just was like, in this completely different zone. And what an amazing experience and gift and healing. So it's like we have this opportunity in these times to like go into that more open-hearted space if we're open to it, if we're looking for it, maybe if we're present to the possibility of it.
Yeah, I love what you were saying. I love all of that. And definitely one of the things that jumped out at me that I've been thinking about, maybe because we watched one of the movies that we watched had this moment where it was like a Santa movie. It was the new Rock movie with Santa. And the Rock wants to quit being the master elf because he can no longer see adults for the children that they once were. And he can't see their innocence, which is great. It's such a cool, profound message. And at the end of the movie, he sees a dad talking to his son, and then he just sees the two kids. There is inner child work that is happening around the holidays. And I think it comes out in this desire for connection, this desire for tenderness and support. It's one of the components, I think, that make it such kind of an interesting, energetic time for a lot of people, at least anyone who celebrates any of these kind of holidays where they have time where collectively we get together as humans and we reflect and we gather. And that's also just part of the New Year process as well. So that can elicit a lot of memories for us. Every year we do this thing, right? How many things do we do like that? There's a handful of them, and they're usually holidays. And so I do think it brings up for a lot of people this connection to the inner child, and that could often, it's a wounded inner child, unfortunately. And so I do think it creates a very unique energetic signature. And there's a lot, the exciting thing when I look at it from kind of a pull, like when I pull further and further back from it, I can just see there's so much potential. There is so much potential for healing, for love, for sharing, for reconnecting, for repair, I think. And it's paired with this time of year that is both encouraging us to be reflective because we're coming up to the end of the year, and it's encouraging us to be reflective because it's colder, we're all inside. We've got this moment where we start looking back and moving into an evaluative process about, this year is almost done. What was it like? What would I want it to be next year? So it is a very interesting time of year and potential. I guess that's what I'm circling around here. There's just so much potential, and I totally understand, especially as someone who worked at a nonprofit for a long time, why these missions, you really want to catch people in that special moment, because often the work that these people are doing, like Pastor Vinny, it is so much bigger than what most of us are able to accomplish. And if you can get in there and you can kind of get outside of your normal 9 to 5 brain, and you can see the beauty that some of these offerings are, you can support it and be a part of it as well, which is another beautiful part of the holiday season.
Yeah, and I just have to say this, and we may not want to open this up too much, but what that made me think of is really holding on to values during this time, because there is a pull into making this time about consumerism. It's weird. It's such a strong pull in our culture. And so almost in response to that, you could double down on what you want this time to look like for you. What do you want this time to mean for you? Is it a time of being together? Is it a time of solitude? Is it a time of quiet? Or maybe it's a time of reflection and visioning for the new year. Maybe it's time, just deciding, is it a time of giving or open-heartedness? What do you want this time to be about in sort of response to the culture telling you what this time is about, So I think those are always, like, when you have that strong cultural messaging coming in, it's always like a good opportunity to be, well, what do I want? What do I want the meaning of this to be? And I think these are like these mini acts of revolution that we can do, is to say, I'm actually not going to stress out about that, or I'm not going to make it about this or that. And I know for me, I feel very lucky, but my kids are very grateful for whatever they get at Christmas. And they always do want to give, they get into the spirit of giving, and they love getting things too. It's joyful. But I think there's the values are there, because that's been really important to me to bring our values in around what this time is about. And
yeah, I'm going to pull what you said there, and we're going to pair with presence, which we've already decided is a big word. What you're talking about is intention. And I want to just make that a little more solid, because as you're saying it, it's hitting really hard for me, where we're recording this 1 week from Christmas. And so there's still time to set your intention, right? And it's making me aware, because I'm thinking about it in relationship to presence. Presence is fine. Presence is good. Being in the now moment, having kind of conscious awareness is great. But what you were just bringing in is this idea of set the tone. Take a word or two that are meaningful to you that you want to bring in. Because I do believe on an energetic level, from the metaphysical, that this is a very powerful time of being able to manifest and bring energy in. And there is ancient magic around these holidays. You were talking about the consumerism that gets put upon the Christmas time, but also I go even further back, and I think about how church kind of took over Christmas time and how they plopped it onto pagan holidays. None of that is to judge any of it. It's all there, but I just think that it is indicative of a knowing and a reality that this is a powerful time for humans. And it's a powerful time of reflection. I think it's a powerful time of transformation. The idea of intention then becomes a lot more important, because instead of just kind of going with the flow, which we've done an episode on going with the flow, we love the flow. That's great. But also intention setting is such a big thing, because I think you really can make some big shifts right now, and or realize moments, whether emotional moments or different realities, like bringing in the idea of grace or giving or just unconditional love or regard, or walking around like the character in that movie and trying to see everyone you see as an inner child, looking at them with different eyes. But you have to have a little bit of that, I'm trying to do this, right? Which I love that you brought that in, and how your personal values, that's what drives it. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, this has been really, I'm so glad we did this episode, because it does kind of shape now sort of the next few weeks. And I'm like looking forward to it in a really different way. Invite everyone that we're in contact with into this kind of intention and energy and presence and consciousness, whether they're interested in it or not, but just to like ground into it sort of at the beginning of this time period and see how it goes. Maybe we'll come back and reflect about how did we do with our self-care and our consciousness around this time.
Well, you and I can be Christmas lighthouses. Hold your own energy, hold your own frequency, choose something high, because, you could choose whatever you want. So, yeah, cool. Yeah, happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays.
Hey everyone, we hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any questions or feedback for us, please send us an email at spiritualunraveling@gmail.com. If you'd like to learn more about what we're both up to, you can follow Ashley at www.mountainmeditationgroup.com. And you can find more about what I'm doing at spiritual-stewardship.com. We hope you have a great day.